Good evening, everyone. How are you doing this evening? Wonderful. This is a great confirmation already. This is an incredibly popular lady. Thank you immensely for coming out. Welcome to McNally Robinson Booksellers. My name is Christian Enright, and I will be your slight host for the evening. There will be more person doing that job more realistically than me following soon. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 1 territory, and the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson's rests on what was once known as Rooster Town, a Métis community, and I hope we can be on this space together tonight meaningfully. Thank you so much. So I'd like to thank you all for being here for the launch of The Mountain Within by Mae Sinclair-Kaspick. A huge round of applause for her, please. Yay. So just a couple of details. We will actually be enjoying a wonderful Q&A. It'll be a bit limited because you can actually have a more intimate encounter with the author once you're actually at the signing portion, which will be coming, of course, towards the end. Also, there is a guest book right here for anyone to sign if they'd like to. And I do apologize to the people in the back. We're at capacity, so I apologize for having to stand. But towards the end of the evening, I'll move all the chairs out of your way, and you'll be able to convene more easily. And there are, I should say, use proper grammar, there are cookies, and there is also coffee. That will hopefully appease you all. But thank you. So I'd like to bring up someone to introduce Frances. Please join me in with her friend and collaborating Marjorie Anderson.
Thank you and good evening, everybody. For nearly 2 years, I was the substantive story editor for Frances's book. And during all that time, whenever I was with her, if I was talking to her on the phone or if we were meeting one-on-one, I had one word that kept swirling in my head, and that was remarkable. She is a remarkable woman. This is a remarkable story. And the book is a remarkable achievement. For those of you who know her, and I know there are many here, relatives and friends, you'll understand exactly why I responded to her in that way. And for those of you who don't know her, once you've heard her read and heard some of the words of her story, I can be fairly certain that when you leave, you will have the same kind of impression that I did. Frances has created for herself a highly successful life. She retired after 37 years of working for the provincial government, and at her retirement party, there were testimonies from her workmates that made us realize completely that she was admired and she was an inspiration to the people she worked with. She's married to a loving, devoted husband, Dennis, whom she calls the love of her life. And she has her stepson here, who came all the way from Regina to support Frances during this date. She's part of a large, loving family and a wide swath of friends and associates. She advocates for a community of people with disability. She drives a car, she cooks, she dances, and she sparkles, and she laughs a most infectious, hearty laugh. All this she has achieved and become without what we take for granted: 2 hands and 2 legs and 2 feet that hold us and sustain us for life. So her story of how she managed that and how she came to be what she is, which is an admirable woman, is a wonderful story. It could have been a story of, it could have been a bleak story. She could have focused on the injustices and indignities of having to live with physical disabilities, of growing up in poverty in inner city Winnipeg, and of some of the discrimination and cultural and social barriers that she had to pass, or that she had to overcome, because those are the facts of her life. That indeed was. And she tells these facts in her stories in a very straightforward way, but she doesn't stay there. She always goes to what took her beyond, took her through. And I'll tell a little story that she tells in her book that just stays in your heart once you've read it. She was out as a child, I don't remember how old. Maybe Francis, you can tell me on the sledding, where you went on the sledding.
I was about 7 years old.
Yeah, about 7 years old. She went with her siblings on a sledding expedition, but at that time she just couldn't manage it. She couldn't trudge up the hill, and her sibling Thelma, who tried to pull her up the hill, just couldn't manage it. It was too hard. So of course she was disappointed and feeling discouraged and full of despair that she couldn't take part in some of the fun that the other children did. But her story didn't stop there. She went on to tell how her siblings then moved mountains of snow in their backyard, lugged pails of water, and built a slide in their backyard. And so then she tells of the triumph and the joy of sliding down that slide that was built for her. And that's the spirit of her book, and that's a motif that runs through it, is that she always gives us how she moves through and around obstacles, never. So in doing that, she takes what could have been a book that might have been a sustained complaint about what life has handed her, and she turns it into a testimony of courage and strength and thankfulness. So remarkable, for sure it is. So that's her story. Now, as a book, it's remarkable in many ways. Not many of us have the courage and the tenacity to write a memoir of our life. It took her 15 years to do it. She typed, I think, every word of it, and she typed up this full manuscript. In the day of independent publishing, which is a great thing now because we can have access to more stories like Francis's, she hunted up and discovered all of the professional people she needed to support her in her story. Not too long ago, in fact, about 10 years ago, I don't know if many memoirs like this would have been published. My family and I published a story about our mother. We thought she was a remarkable woman too. And we spoke to a book owner in BC and asked if he would take the book. And this was his comment, a memoir. Is she famous? Or is there something salacious about her story? Because that's what sells. And of course, we know that that isn't only what sells, and now we have stories like Francis's because of the independent publishing book industry, where you can have access to the professionals that will help you with the book and help you get out with it, that she is able to bring her book out. And I don't know if I have read a book that has been sanctioned by the traditional publishers that is any more or even as inspirational and full of substance as Francis's book is. You cannot know her without admiring her and marveling at her. I certainly know that. And I don't think you'll be able to read her book without going away with something that inspires you, because she is a remarkable woman. So I turn it over now to the indomitable spirit of Francis Kaspick.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Okay, I want to say good evening to everyone and welcome. Thank you so much. It's my great honor to be here tonight to launch my book, The Mountain Within. To begin, I want you to remember me telling you this as you read my story. It is beyond our control how we come into the world, and even more so, what body we arrive in. So I want you to remember those two things. And throughout my early years, I worked steadily and diligently within myself to accept the body I received at birth, to accept all of me, and not feel diminished as a person. And I'm proud that I was able to do just that, and I am fine with who I am. And all my life, I have been told you can't. From a very young age, my awareness was, which part of me can't? Instinctively, I knew to challenge that assumption. I learned to become fiercely independent and replace the word can't with can. And it was about 15 years ago I began writing my story. I wanted to write it because I knew I could inform others about unique aspects of living with disabilities. For too long, I found Indigenous people with physical disabilities have been unacknowledged and underrepresented. I highlighted our achievements to make a positive difference by showing how to move forward to better our lives. It's kind of high. There, I think I got it, sorry. This book falls under 3 groups I identify with. Indigenous, physical abilities, female. Or is that physical abilities, female, Indigenous? Or is that Indigenous, female, physical? See what I mean? I had to balance all those 3 areas all my life. Anyhow, so I wanted to acknowledge and honor all family members and all the people that support those with physical disabilities, parents, grandparents, social workers, medical care people, everyone who becomes part of our lives. Reveal. I wanted my story to reveal something about my life as a First Nation woman and honor my culture, capturing the history of my great-grandparents and grandparents before I came along was important to me. If in reading my story you gain an insight into my culture, my people, and the unique set of challenges and triumphs experienced by someone with disabilities, I will feel well satisfied. And I have much gratitude. There are so many people to thank. One of them is my husband, Dennis, my loving husband. He's been supportive to me in every way and provided encouragement when at times I struggled with my story. Marjorie Anderson, being a wonderful editor, she guided me, showing me the steps to becoming an author. I leaned on Marjorie many times and we become friends. I hold Marjorie in the highest esteem. Thanks to the staff who operates Friesen Print. Thanks to Pecos First Nation, Media and Credit Union, to McNally Roberts, and to all the out-of-town guests who drove from rural areas, towns, and Saskatchewan, and to my family, my friends, my guests for taking time out to come and make my book launch an extra special night. Miigwech. Okay, so now I'm going to begin my readings. Okay, so let me know. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Innocence. Okay, the first reading is from my time in Kenora Hospital where I was born. And my birth mom, Mae, was 14 years old. My grandmother clearly realized Mae was too young to take on the responsibility of raising me, her granddaughter, and she had to make a decision. Okay, so this is innocence. Frances, the grandmother, has no answers. She understands the horror that Mae has gone through. And in pregnancy, her frantic and successful attempts to end the pregnancy, the results of which are only being realized. And then there is this beautiful little baby who will need help, likely more than anyone can imagine. But Frances knows there is no help coming. There is nowhere to go and no one for her to turn to. She is on her own. Her husband is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, the impact of which has torn the family apart. Her people have suffered in many ways that have left them feeling alienated and bereft. She has no trust left in social services, fearing that if she exposes her family's situation by asking for help, her children will be taken from her. A knock interrupts this private moment of despair. Dr. Plazor is at the door along with one of the nurses, Mrs. Love. May we come in? We don't mean to interrupt, but we'd like a word with the two of you. Miss Love remains near the door as the doctor moves closer to the bed. His face is flushed and his eyes are averted away from Frances. He seems to be addressing a spot on the wall just beyond her head. Over her lifetime, the baby will require a lot of medical attention. I recommend she be permanently placed in a facility with others who have deformities, and where both she and her medical needs will be cared for. He pauses and now turns his round, imploring eyes on Frances before continuing. Mrs. Sinclair, what could this child possibly accomplish in her life? Mrs. Love then steps forward, smiling warmly. My husband is a Shriner in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The Shriners Hospital specializes and caters to crippled children. You won't have any financial worries for the baby because the hospital treats disabled children extremely well and takes care of all their needs. My husband can make all the arrangements for her. I know this is a difficult time for the both of you, but some serious thoughts must be given to the child's future. It won't be an easy decision, but it will be in her best interest. Emerging from the thoughts running rampant in her head, Frances begins talking, but not to Mae, but to her little granddaughter, who has been placed back in the room in her bassinet. I don't want you, my firstborn grandchild, living in a facility away from us, your family. What if they experiment on you? What if you need our help? Who will tell us, and what is the best for you? God wouldn't have allowed you to come into this world to be in our family if it wasn't for a purpose. Frances turns to Mae and speaks calmly, slowly, and quietly. We will keep this baby, and I will do what you cannot do. Okay, so celebrations. The second reading, I spent anywhere from 6 months to 10 months in Shriners Hospital, from the time I was a baby, from 6 months to 16 years old. Shriners Hospital became my second home, and the nurses were more like nannies to me. There was a low turnover of staff over the years, and the hospital celebrated all occasions from Easter to Valentine's Day. Celebrations. Every Christmas was absolutely and exquisitely wonderful for both the inpatients and outpatients at Shriners. The magic of the festive season was not only seen but also felt, no matter what our circumstances. As inpatients, we were served assorted finger foods, dainties, and refreshments. Carolers sang out traditional Christmas songs, and we sang along. The best and most exciting entertainment occurred when Santa and his elves arrived, with Santa's boisterous voice calling out, "Ho, ho, ho." All the children and staff received gifts that put big, happy smiles on their faces. One year I received a tea set as well as a Seven Heaven cologne and powder gift box. "This is for you, Mom," I said, handing her the gift box, "but I'll keep my new tea set." Smiling, she looked at the box while I happily peeled a mandarin orange from my bag of goodies. To accomplish this, I'd bite into the soft peel, and then with my short left arm, I'd hold the orange in place and effortlessly peel back the skin of the orange with my long right arm. Coming from poverty, Mom and I were particularly delighted at a function like this. Third reading. Most people are born with two bones below their knees, and I was born with one bone in each leg, and my feet were abnormally small. As I grew, my body became too heavy for my small feet, and I spent time in a manual wheelchair by the time I was in grade 6. This reading is about my first experience with winter driving in a wheelchair. Okay, winter driving. My first experience of dealing with winter conditions in a wheelchair was difficult. I didn't like to be left out or left behind at home. Being wheeled through soft snow was the same as being wheeled through sand, but packed snow was much easier to wheel over. When the snow melted and froze again, it was a real chore to navigate all the ruts. Thelma and our three main girlfriends, Lorraine, Gertie, and Bones, took turns wheeling me in the -0 temperatures, sometimes freezing their hands as they did that. Bouncing to and fro my chair like a rag doll, I would speak with a vibrating voice. "I feel like I'm in a Mixmaster." And we laughed at how funny my voice sounded, which caused me to act up even more. I told jokes and sang, and sending everyone into hysterics. I loved being with Thelma and my neighborhood friends, but I knew they wouldn't always be there to help me. Life changes, nothing remains the same, and whatever I questioned the Holy Spirit, I would do, my existence, Mom words would come to mind. No relatives to help our family. You have to do it on your own. You have to make it in the world by yourself. I prayed for a sign that would show me what I should do for myself. So after this first experience with my wheelchair and snow, my huge realization was we were all going to grow up and life will change. And where will I be? And that led me to having to make a decision about later in life about myself. So now we are at 4, live your decision. This selection is from the time I was encouraged to make the decision about amputation. And I was so frightened at that time, at that young age, to make that decision. So live your decision. For almost a year, the therapist and I considered every possible scenario, and I knew I was at least getting all the information necessary. However, The thought of amputation still terrified me. I knew that after the surgery there would be no going back, and that at least initially I'd be completely reliant on a manual wheelchair, which had already proven difficult enough for me to maneuver independently. The only thing I did not know was what to do. I thought deeply and tried to visualize my future. It seemed strange to be thinking so much about one's future at only 15 years of my age. My thoughts turned to Thelma. She was not always going to be there for me, at least not the way she was now, and she was already interested in dating, as I was, but I knew I had to deal with this obstacle first. There was no doubt in my mind that Shriners had looked after me and treated me well over the years. I had received the best medical care possible, and a lot of time and effort had gone into my well-being. I wondered if I should just place my decision and trust in their hands. I thought about marriage and whether any man would find me attractive. First, if I was in a wheelchair. Second, if I had no feet. I thought about Mom and what she said about her not always being around, but my mind just closed. That was something I did not want to think about. When I approached Mom with all my fears, she simply replied, "Be strong, Francis. You have to be strong." Mom's many lectures over the years remained the same, but for some reason, perhaps of maturity or from being thought overload, a light went on in my head. And Mom's words and the enormity of her insight and wisdom made an astounding impact. Poor family, no one to help, have to make it. Only you can make the decision. 5, this is it. I made the decision. Even though I did so, I didn't feel 100% sure that I did the right thing. This is it. They transferred me from my bed to the gurney and wheeled me to the dungeon I have always feared. My heart was beating so wildly it seemed as though it was going to burst right out of my chest. My mouth felt like sandpaper and I was taking deep gulps of air. I was petrified. As we passed by staff and patients, they offered comforting and soothing words, but my eyes were tightly shut, and I refused to open them to see who was saying what. Even with my eyes shut, the bright lights of the dungeon shone through my closed eyelids. The operating table was cold and hard. Clink, clink. Someone was arranging the surgical instruments. Hiss. The sound of the ether froze me to the core. I hated that room. "Okay, Francis, we're going to place a mask over your nose and mouth." The mask covered the bottom half of my face. The smell reminded me of putrid tar. Panicking, I struggled to tear the mask off. The surgical nurse, Miss Wilson, took control. "Francis, it's just us. You know who we are. Let's start over, real slow. Just like last time. You hold the mask. Slowly, Francis, slowly. Take little breaths, now deeper breaths." I was grateful we'd known each other for 15 years. I trusted her to take care of me, to guide me through, to make sure I was safe. Succumbing to the ether, my last thought was, I hope I never, ever have to have another operation again. No turning back. Waking up in the recovery room. No turning back. Waking up out of a deep, groggy state, I listened for the familiar sounds of the recovery room before opening my eyes. I wanted to know I was safe and out of the dungeon. It felt as if I had tight shoes on, or that someone was tightly squeezing my toes. I immediately thought that maybe they had changed their minds and left my feet on me after all. I felt hopeful. When the nurse checked my vital signs, I asked, "Did they really do the operation? It feels as if my feet are still there." My croaky voice echoed in the room. "The surgery is over, Francis," she said. "Those are phantom nerves you are feeling. You'll always feel as if your toes are still there, but I'm sorry, your feet are gone." She paused for a moment. "Do you want to take a look?" Tired and too dizzy to say another word, I slowly shook my head no. 7. A certain attraction. Living at the YWCA, I'm 18 years old, graduated from high school, which was an accomplishment for me. I'm at the crossroads of furthering my education or finding employment. At that time, I had a crush on this fella, and he occupied my thoughts. Having a lot of free time, I kept busy with needle and thread, sewing and embroidering my clothes. Okay, certain attraction. At that point in my life, I didn't know which road to take or even how to get started. Although school had been difficult for me, in many ways I was open to furthering my education. And when I thought about employment, I wondered what I was actually capable of doing. But at that time, my crush on Ted was what occupied my mind the most. Fashion had become important to me too. It was still the hippie era, and I dressed the part of one of the flower power groupies. Some days I wore my one and only long blue jean skirt. I had made it by splitting the inseam of one of my old pair of jeans and hand sewing it into a skirt using material from another pair of jeans. Sewing always relaxed me, and I was able to thread a needle by placing it in a pillow or a cardboard box or anything else I could find that would hold the needle in place. With my dexterity, I was able to handle the tiny objects between the ends of my arms. It was easy for me to push the thread through the eye of the needle, and my arms were strong enough to push the needle back and forth through the material. I considered my clothes to be pieces of art and thought they made me look cool. During the summers, I loved wearing gauze tops, especially the one I dyed yellow and embroidered on the collar, the cuffs, and around the buttonholes. I always loved to wear my blue jeans with patches on the knees. Buying clothes that enabled me to dress independently wasn't easy. If I loved and really wanted to wear a particular button-up top, I simply sewed the buttonholes smaller so the buttons wouldn't come undone when I slipped the top over my head. Footwear, however, was another tricky thing for me to do. Shoes had to be easy and manageable for me to put on and take off by myself, which meant no lace-ups. I needed shoes that fit exactly in every way, and the soles had to be non-slip. Still, with my new awareness of being attractive, which at that time was centered on being attractive to Ted, I was willing to make every effort possible to be cool and fashionable. Yeah. So, concluding, I'm very happy to have Volume 1 on the bookshelves, and I'm officially retired. So, I'm free to pursue various avenues to bring positive awareness to Indigenous with physical disabilities. And I'm passionate with the arts, so I plan on art-related projects, because there's many, related to physical disabilities of Indigenous. Then there's also Volume 2 to begin. And then most importantly, I guess, out of all of this, is my husband would really like for me to start making meals. Not just doing the dishes. So I got lots of time for that now. Got the cookbook from the stepson here. So, and I will have time now to meet up with people and over a cup of tea, and I'm really looking forward now to enjoying my time. So thank you, McGwitch, for everybody coming out being so supportive.
Okay, everyone, so we have time for 3 questions. So who has a wonderful, transcendent, incredible question they'd like to ask? If not, you can always talk to her at the signing portion of the evening. So it's not, is there any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Yes?
I would just like to say, I just want to say congratulations to Francis, and a lot of us, like she said, we have our hands and our legs and our feet. And how many times have we said, I'm going to do something, and we never do? I want to give her credit, so much credit, and congratulations for doing what she said she was going to do. Years ago, she said she was writing a book, and I'd read everything in the book, and I never doubted her. I just knew she was going to write it. And I am so proud of her for doing so. My mom was very good friends with her mom, and I'm so proud of her.
Great. Thank you so much. Good strategy. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Yes.
What happened to Ted?
It's probably here somewhere.
Yeah, got lost in the shop. I couldn't wait around. I had to move on. Oh, there's a question over here.
Another question? Yeah. Just as loud as you can. Just.
Oh, hi.
Let's say hi and how proud
Oh,
she is.
hi. Thank you, Claudette. She's in the book, by the way. Claudette over there, she's in the book. Yes, we've known each other from Shriners, little kids. Wow, long time. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, Francis.
Oh, hi. Well, we've known each other from camp, little kids.
Yes, we have. I wanted to say that I'm looking forward to reading your book. And that you're an inspiration too. Like we all had the no, you can't. I had the same thing. And I said, I can. And you go and do it and you don't think about it. And you're just an inspiration. And you were a lot of fun at camp.
Thank you, Eva.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So if anybody wants for some signatures,
Yes, of
here I
course,
am.
yeah, everyone. So thank a huge round of applause for Frances again, everyone, please. Thank you so much. Okay. Here's where the social contract comes in. Okay, everyone, so here's what. We're going to try to forge a line. There is some food here, of course. If you'd like to be in line for the signing, we'll try to have it this way. We have several people in wheelchairs, so if